Alright guys, I know it's getting really close to release date now, but the last time I played Ground Zeroes I noticed a couple more problems with the gameplay, and I feel like they're important, they need to be fixed, and hopefully there's enough time left before the game comes out to address these issues. I also had a few more suggestions of things you might be able to add, but I think it's probably getting too late at this point to add new things, so I guess you could think of it as more of a wish list, like I'm hoping that's in the game, but if it's not a big deal. But before I get into that, I just want to say that I'm disappointed after I saw the E3 2015 demo, only because I realized that my request for a different control configuration is not going to happen. I knew that when I saw the updated controls for the iDroid, and when I saw posts like this on Twitter that confirmed that the controls are pretty much the same. The iDroid now uses both the left shoulder buttons and the left D-pad, and those are the buttons I wanted to use to make my control configuration possible. The binoculars also uses both of the left shoulder buttons, but it doesn't use both of the right shoulder buttons. So that means the binoculars could still be an item in the item wheel, and that would be accessible through the left D-pad. Or I could customize the buttons myself so that I can still switch items with the L2 button like it was in Metal Gear 4, and switch weapons with the R2 button, and you would use aim plus L3 to go to first person view. The only problem is I can only switch support weapons. I can't do the same thing with my primary and secondary weapon or my guns. So I've suggested the idea of combining all the weapons into one menu along with the ABC slots, but now I've revised my idea to have it separated into primary, secondary, and support weapon categories, where it basically would be your ABC slots. So if you're on slot A or primary, you hold down the weapon button, it brings up your primary weapons, and then you can select which one you want with the right stick. You tap the weapon button again, it goes to the next category, which is your secondary weapons, and then I've heard and now I see that we can carry 2 secondary weapons in the Phantom Pain. So you can do the same thing you did with your primary weapons, tap it again, it goes to category C, which is all of your support weapons. Once again, you hold down the button when you're on the support weapons, all 8 weapons show up and you can choose them with the right stick. So the weapon menus would look exactly the same, but they would work a little bit differently. So since you have up to 12 weapons, it would be way too many weapons to cycle through, so that's why you need the ABC slots and everything separated into different categories. So it's a little bit more organized, and it's a combination of my previous idea and the way the game actually is. So the first problem I noticed, and it's probably the most important because it has to do with the silent pistol, and that's the gun you're probably going to use the most if you're trying to play the game the way it was meant to be played, all stealthy. So what happens is, it seems like at a certain distance the darts don't seem to fly in the exact center of the aiming reticle, and as you can see here, I've lined up all 3 lines of the reticle exactly where the enemy's head is, and I'm not getting a headshot. And so I've noticed that if you move the reticle to the right, eventually I get a headshot, and you can hear the sound right here. So that tells me it doesn't have anything to do with the bullet drop mechanic, and that enemy was 45 meters away, and at the time I was playing I noticed an enemy to my right, so I mark him and he's 40 meters away. So again, you see that all 3 lines are lined up with his head, and I get him first try. And I wouldn't call it a lucky shot because I lined the reticle up the same way I did on the enemy I was shooting at a few seconds ago. So I don't know exactly what's going on, but it seems to happen around the 40 or 45 meter mark, and hopefully it's something you can fix. So the next problem I noticed has to do with throwing grenades while you're in cover. So when you're behind a concrete barrier like this, you get near the edge, you throw, no problem. You get in the middle though, and you stand up. So I feel like it's not as stealthy, and you should stay squatted behind cover. So in Hitman Absolution, when you approach cover and you ready an object to throw, only the arc line shows up, and then you briefly stand up and throw the object and go quickly back into cover. Very stealthy. In Ground Zeroes, you peek up over the top of the object and throw, and then there's a long recovery time after you throw the grenade before you go back into cover. Another big problem is that when you crouch walk towards a low standing object like this and you ready a magazine or a grenade, it makes you automatically stand up, and this is just terrible to me because it makes you get spotted, and it also happens with guns.
Contact!
It's okay that Snake straightens up his back a little bit when he wants to throw, but that's all he should do, and this should be enough to get the grenade over the wall and still not be spotted. But with a gun, you do need to stand up a little bit since you can't curve it around the cover like you can with a throwable object, but the game should let me decide when I want to stand up. Another issue when you're throwing a grenade from corner cover like this and you switch to a gun and then stand up and then switch back to a grenade and try to throw, it makes you stand up in a different position and then you pop out of cover, and then the only way to reset it is to get back into cover. You can also aim your gun or aim the grenade away from cover, and that will also reset it, but it should always go back to the corner cover position if you're trying to throw something. Another automatic action that happens is the automatic cover, and I know I talked about this in my first feedback video, and it's the thing that bothers me the most. But now that I know that the controls are basically going to stay the same, I know that the automatic cover is still going to be there, so there is a way to fix it though. First of all, no automatic crouching whatsoever. When you're dashing, running full speed, the cover system should be disabled until you slow down. And then when you're taking cover on an object, since you pop out of cover so easily, that should be adjusted. You should have to pull the left stick straight back to get out of cover. With those few changes, the cover system would not be perfect to me, but it would be a lot better. Another instance of automatically standing up happens when you try to crawl between two buildings and it's too tight of a space for Snake to lay down. He'll automatically get up into a crouched position, and I've been spotted back here before because of that. I've also been spotted in the watchtowers quite a few times because of that happening, and I think all that should happen is that Snake should just keep crawling in the same animation but not stand up, and you should just have to change your body position to get where you want. I've asked for the camera angles not to change when you grab someone and throw them down before, so that way you could throw them down and instantly headshot them, but I know this isn't that much of a problem on the single player because you stun in one hit, but I still don't want it to do it. That way I can practice it offline, because on MGO I wouldn't want the camera to change either, especially since if your CQC is not that powerful. Also, if you have like a knife or at least a stun rod and you grab someone, throw them down, it would be an awkward transition for the camera to move around and then you have to try and stab them. So one thing I forgot about though is that if you stand close to a fence, it automatically targets the fence or wall or some other object, and I just feel like the distance that you need to be standing next to the object to trigger that should be reduced to maybe like 5 or 6 feet or 2 meters, whatever. So it would pretty much look like this. In the E3 2015 demo, the camera angle still changes when you throw someone down. I know this isn't the final build of the game, so I still have hope that this could be changed. There are some places where you can stand and throw someone down and the camera doesn't change, like this. And to me that's so much better because you can line up for a headshot right afterwards. It's a simple request. I feel like I'm not asking for too much, and I think it would improve the CQC quite a bit. I wouldn't even have to worry about the camera angle change if I had the ability to grab an enemy and use my handgun on them like this. It would be useful in both the single player and the multiplayer, but it would work a little differently online. It would be based off of your character's skills. You could use the square button to shoot the enemy you're holding onto. The way you could do the neck break is while tapping the CQC button, you just press the action button or triangle to break their neck. I like this move because with a knife, it leaves a pool of blood, which leaves signs of enemy activity, as the guards would say. It's also useful when you want to quickly get rid of a person you're using as a human shield without the blood. The controls for stabbing someone in the chest while you're holding them with CQC wouldn't change at all. It would be great if you could use your knife on someone and then instantly pick them up without having to set them down. On ground zeros, you just stab them or choke them, and you have no choice but to let them go after you knock them out. It'd be nice if you could just keep holding on to the CQC button and then hold circle all in one motion to pick them up. Since Snake always has his knife with him, even though it's not in his inventory, even though I would like if it was, you could do the CQC like Splinter Cell, where you could set it to lethal or non-lethal. And of course, the non-lethal would mean that the CQC stays the same way as it is, but with lethal you would equip a knife. So you could bring up any weapon menu screen, and I thought maybe you could use the X button to change the CQC to lethal or non-lethal, since the square and triangle button are already used for something. And when you're running along, you could stab someone with a knife real quick instead of just punching them. So it looks something like this. If your knife was in your inventory, you could do a combination of a grab and throw down without the camera angle change, and then stun or kill. I doubt there's enough time to implement this into the single player, but it could be in MGO. It's a quick way to take someone out, even though you're not encouraged to kill in the single player mode. It also adds more variety to the CQC, since all we have is non-lethal takedowns, but in Splinter Cell you have both, and it's sad to see another game have way more options for CQC than Metal Gear. Unless there's more to the CQC than what was available in Ground Zeroes, so that would be a nice surprise to have in the Phantom Pain. And I know I praise Splinter Cell a lot, but to me it has better controls, better stealth mechanics, and honestly the CQC completely destroys the CQC in Metal Gear. It's fun to do, amazing to watch, and since it has so much variety, you really don't get tired of seeing the same thing over and over. And most of it happens in real time, which I think looks better than always slowing it down like Metal Gear 5 does, and I hope you put an option in there to turn that off. I've asked before for the ability to be able to use a handgun while driving a Jeep, but I don't know why I didn't ask for the ability to throw a grenade or a support weapon. So if you're in a vehicle, to switch support weapons you would have to use the right D-pad, and the problem is the right D-pad turns the headlights on and off. So you have to switch that to probably up on the D-pad, and that would mean basically using the same controls as when you're carrying someone on your back. You can throw support weapons, but you can't use any support weapons that you place like C4, and you don't have access to your primary weapon, so that would be perfect for using the up on the D-pad to turn the headlights on and off. This would affect your flashlight on your gun, so now you would just aim and press up on the D-pad to turn it on and off, up on the D-pad for spotlights as well. So I suggested that the idea of having a quick equip and unequip for your suppressor, the new controls for that would have to be aim plus down on the D-pad. So if that feature doesn't get added to the game, which I highly doubt it will, I can at least use the D-Walker to get around quick and use a secondary weapon or even a primary weapon. But the support buddy I'll probably use the most is the Diamond Dog Wolf, so there still is a reason to have the ability to shoot a gun and throw a grenade while you're driving a Jeep. While I'm on the subject of support buddies, I found this on YouTube where it says the controls to run with the horse is square. I hope you don't have to hold square, but I'm also thinking, why not use the L3 dash button? If you have to hold square while running with the horse, then that means you can't look around freely with the camera, and it will be an automatically adjusting camera, and I just feel like that's cumbersome and awkward. It seems like the controls would just be the same as when you're walking around on foot, because obviously you press the crouch button to lean off the side of the horse, and you can still shoot a handgun while you're on a horse. This makes perfect sense too, since other support buddies like the wolf mimics your movements. When you lay down, he lays down. When you run, he runs with you, as long as you call him. And when you slow down, he slows down too. Speaking of running, I noticed that the camera still zooms in when you dash, and I've said this before, but when it zooms in, your own body blocks your view when you're trying to run and gun. I've also noticed other things, like when you climb underneath something, it still goes to first person view automatically, and this is going to be a problem if the aiming sensitivity is too jerky and I have to have my camera speed set down low in first person view. You can't climb up to the top of a wall and hang and shoot or throw a grenade. You're forced to climb up and over it. And you can tell from this scene here that alternate fire won't be coming back either, because you can see the triangle button is telling you to equip and unequip the underbarrel attachment, which means you won't be able to quick throw a grenade overhand. Alternate fire would have solved that problem. There's still no black outline around the grenade arc line, which doesn't make sense because there's a black outline around everything else, and it's going to make it hard to see in brightly lit sky. I see that the aiming over the shoulder is still not symmetrical on both sides of the screen, and that's kind of a problem because I use my character's body to help me aim. If you look at the first footage shown of Ground Zeroes, you can see that it was symmetrical, so it was right a long time ago, and it's been changed before, so hopefully it can be changed back. And that's just a few examples. I could go on, but on the bright side, something I did ask for was when you take cover and you use your binoculars, you peek up over the top of the objects you're taking cover on, and then when you are done using your binoculars, you stay in cover instead of popping out. I also asked for the ability to use a handgun and shield at the same time, but really that wasn't a surprise since that was in Peace Walker, so it was probably going to be in there regardless of whether I asked for it or not. I talked about this again in the last video, but I realized I was incorrect about something. when you aim over the shoulder and you transfer to first person view, I thought it shifted over to the side where Snake's head is, but actually it's just an optical illusion because I'm so focused on the enemy standing in front of me. I failed to notice that when you transfer to first person view from over the shoulder, it still stays looking at the exact same spot. The lock-on effect was probably the wrong choice of words, because really what's happening is when Snake's arms move, it's moving to correct the angle of trajectory of where the bullet would fly so that it's more realistic. When the aiming reticle turns red, it doesn't mean that it's locked on. It just means, as we all know, you're standing within the effective range of the weapon. So I just felt the need to correct my mistakes, and you can pretty much disregard everything I said about this subject in the last video. The developers probably had no idea what I was talking about anyway. Everything's probably fine the way it is, so there's really no need to do anything. It's not like you need my approval for that, though. Even though pretty much nothing has changed with the controls or the mechanics, and I barely got any of the things I asked for, I'm still looking forward to the release of the game. It looks so immersive and has such high replay value. Right now, Metal Gear Solid 3 is my favorite one in the series, and it had really bad shooting controls, but I ignored it because I love the game so much, so I put up with it. So at least Metal Gear 5 has much better shooting controls than Part 3. I'm a firm believer in sometimes people don't know what they want until you show it to them. A good example of that is with the weapon customization. I heard that Kojima wasn't really interested in it, but once Yoji Shinkawa showed him what he did, he was blown away by it. So I guess I was hoping that the same thing could happen to me, where I show them my ideas and they would be blown away by it and end up putting it in the game. But I understand that a lot of the things I asked for is probably not an easy change to put in the game, so I was prepared for it not happening anyway. I can't say I'm still not a little disappointed though. And some things are just honest criticism, I just noticed some flaws and pointed them out, and I was hoping that the developers could fix it. So even though I really didn't get what I wanted, it's not like I'm going to cry about it.
I need to go to my quiet place.
Even though to some people it might sound like I am whining and complaining about not getting what I wanted. I did put a lot of time, effort, and thought into these feedback videos, probably more so than anyone else I know of, but now I feel like I just wasted most of my time. Maybe if I would have had more support from the MGO community and they could have backed me up, we might have seen more changes made, but I guess we'll never know. I guess if you want something done a certain way, you gotta do it yourself, but I'm not a game developer. Sometimes I wish I was, but I've heard it's a very stressful job, but it can also be very rewarding at times too. I have no idea how long it takes or how hard it is to make any changes, even if it's a small one, so I can appreciate all the hard work that the developers have put into making this massive game. This will be my final feedback video, at least for the single player. I don't know about MGO, but I'm mostly about gameplay, as you know, and I'm mostly concerned with what my character's abilities are, how the controls are designed. Are they efficient? Can I do everything fast? Are there flaws? So when it comes to the game design, though, I'm not as picky, but as long as MGO has certain standard game modes like deathmatch, team deathmatch, base, rescue, team sneak, all that, I'll be happy with it. It's looking like there won't be an MGO 3 beta, and I feel like E3 was a perfect opportunity to announce that and to show off some gameplay and really promote the game when everyone's paying attention. So maybe Gamescom will be the next place they can do that, but that's only like a couple weeks before the release of the game, and I feel like people need to know a little earlier so that they'll be more pumped and excited to play MGO. I don't really want to see it be less successful or even as successful as MGO 2. I do want it to be really popular. I want it to be, maybe, it probably will never be at the level of Call of Duty, but, it deserves it. At least the last one did. And I just don't understand why people keep playing Call of Duty. It's not that special. But MGO is very unique. I'm not really expecting any of my ideas from this feedback video to be in the game either, but I figured why not? It's worth a shot. But if anything does get put in the game, it's probably going to be an MGO, not for the single player. They're probably done with it and they're just polishing it at this point. Regardless of what I think about the gameplay or what I have to say about it, I'm sure millions of other fans will love it and think it's perfect the way it is. and I know I'll still enjoy it. The new demo was just mind-blowing. It really showed off a lot of new features that got me even more excited to play the game. And that's probably one thing that developers have noticed from these feedback videos, as I've mentioned a few times that I'm going to buy the game anyway, so they probably thought, well, why do we need to make any changes then? Sometimes I wonder though if the Japanese studio has even seen my feedback videos, because I've only gotten confirmation from the LA studio. It would be nice if they responded somehow on Twitter and just said, thanks for the feedback, we saw your video. But I know that Yoji Shinkawa is, responsible for a lot of the game's mechanics, and he doesn't engage in social media. He stays away from Twitter, so I don't know if Kojima has seen my videos, but if he has, he thought his way was better, so oh well. I guess I'll just leave my feedback videos on my channel just in case anyone's curious and they want to see what my vision for the game was, and they'd be able to see what could have been. And who knows, maybe some of my ideas will get put in the next Metal Gear, but that's a long ways off. So far, no one's ever made my dream video game. Metal Gear Solid Rising had the potential to be that game, but of course it got cancelled and handed over to Platinum, and I don't like what Platinum did with it. It was nowhere near the level of quality that Kojima Productions is capable of making. And now I know that Silent Hills is cancelled, so there's been some disappointing things happening in the last few years. To me, this year's E3 was the best one ever so far. There was so many amazing games that are coming out soon. It's going to give Metal Gear 5 a lot of competition, but I still hope it wins Game of the Year. Alright, I think that's just about enough for this video. I can't wait till September 1st. It's going to be a great day. And thanks for watching.